worldwide hum. In thousands of locations around the world, people hear it. A persistent, low-frequency hum that never stops. Sounds like a distant diesel engine idling and drives some listeners to the edge of sanity. It's been recorded on audio equipment, detected by seismographs, and investigated by acoustic engineers. Yet mainstream science refuses to acknowledge it exists. The phenomenon is remarkably consistent. Witnesses describe a low-pitched humming or rumbling sound, typically between 30 and 80 hertz. That's loudest indoors and at night. Only about 2% of the population in affected areas can hear it, but for those who can, it's maddening. They can't sleep, can't concentrate, and in extreme cases, become suicidal. The first widely documented case appeared in the late 1960s in Bristol, England. Since then, reports have emerged from over 100 locations worldwide: Taos, New Mexico, Windsor, Ontario, Bondi, Australia, and dozens more. What makes the hum scientifically fascinating is that it's measurable. In 2012, researchers actually succeeded in recording it using specialized equipment. The sound was real, detectable, and came from an unknown source. Environmental agencies in multiple countries have confirmed unusual low-frequency acoustic signatures in affected areas. Several theories have been proposed: electromagnetic radiation interacting with the human auditory system, very low-frequency radio transmissions from military installations, microseismic activity, or industrial sources like gas pipelines and power plants. But here's where it gets strange. Despite being a measurable, reproducible phenomenon affecting thousands of people, there's virtually no mainstream scientific research into the hum. In 2003, an acoustic consultant was hired by the government to investigate the hum in one affected area. His team confirmed the phenomenon was real and prepared to identify the source. Before the final phase could begin, the project was abruptly canceled. All data was classified, and team members were told to destroy their personal records. Witnesses who report the hum to authorities are often treated as psychiatric cases rather than legitimate complainants. Yet the phenomenon shows none of the characteristics of medical conditions. It stops completely when sufferers travel outside affected zones. It affects multiple people in the same locations, and it can be recorded on equipment. Multiple universities have received proposals to study the hum, complete with private funding. These proposals are consistently rejected without explanation. Scientists who publish papers on the hum find their work excluded from mainstream journals. Conference presentations on the topic are canceled. One researcher who studied the phenomenon for over a decade reported unusual interference in his work. Equipment malfunctioned during key measurements. Data files were corrupted. When he finally prepared to publish findings linking the hum to a specific industrial source, he received a visit from government officials who strongly discouraged publication. The hum continues to spread to new locations. Reports from previously unaffected areas emerge regularly, yet mainstream science maintains its silence, treating one of the most widespread acoustic mysteries of our time as though it doesn't exist. Hessdalen lights. For over a century, a remote valley in Norway has been the site of one of the most thoroughly documented unexplained phenomena on Earth. Bright lights appear in the sky, performing maneuvers that defy known physics. Captured on camera thousands of times, studied by multiple universities, and monitored by permanent scientific equipment, yet mainstream science pretends the phenomenon doesn't exist. The Hessdalen Valley sits in central Norway, a sparsely populated area with little industry or air traffic. Since the late 1800s, residents have reported strange lights appearing in the sky. The phenomenon intensified dramatically in the early 1980s, when lights began appearing up to 20 times per week. What separates Hessdalen from other unexplained light phenomena is the quality of documentation. In 1984, scientists established a research station in the valley with radar, cameras, spectrum analyzers, and magnetometers. They detected and recorded the lights repeatedly. The data showed objects moving at speeds exceeding 8,000 meters per second, making instantaneous direction changes and emitting unusual electromagnetic signatures. The lights display characteristics that shouldn't be possible. They appear suddenly, hang motionless in the air for minutes or hours, then accelerate to high speeds instantly. They change color from white to yellow to red. They split into multiple lights, then recombine. Radar shows solid objects, but visual observation shows only light. The Permanent Monitoring Station, established in 1998, has recorded thousands of events. The data is consistent and reproducible. Multiple instruments detect them simultaneously, ruling out equipment malfunction or observer error. University teams have conducted at least 9 scientific expeditions to Hessdalen. They have published papers in peer-reviewed journals. The data is available to anyone who wants to examine it. The phenomenon is real, measurable, and ongoing. Yet mainstream science ignores it completely. Major physics journals reject papers on Hessdalen without review. Research proposals are dismissed as pseudoscience, despite the extensive empirical data. Scientists who study the lights find their careers damaged, their funding cut, and their work excluded from scientific conferences. In 2007, researchers detected something extraordinary. During one event, instruments recorded unusual electromagnetic effects. Electronic equipment near the lights malfunctioned. Car engines stalled. One scientist's watch stopped, then resumed after the light disappeared. Most controversial are apparent responses to human presence. Witnesses report that the lights seem aware of observers. They approach people who wave at them. They follow vehicles on roads. In multiple documented cases, the lights appeared within minutes of researchers arriving at observation posts. Despite decades of scientific documentation, government funding for Hessdalen research has been repeatedly denied. A major research grant application, supported by multiple universities and backed by extensive data, was rejected in 2015 with no explanation. The researcher who led the application was subsequently investigated by his university for misuse of research time. The phenomenon continues. The monitoring station records events regularly, yet the scientific establishment maintains its position. Hessdalen is not worthy of serious study, despite being one of the most thoroughly documented unexplained phenomena in modern science. The bloop. In 1997, underwater listening stations detected an ultra-low frequency sound in the South Pacific that was loud enough to be heard over 5,000 kilometers away. The sound had a signature unlike anything in the database of known marine sounds. Analysis suggested it came from a living creature, but one far larger than any animal known to exist. Then the recordings were classified, research was shut down, and mainstream science stopped talking about it entirely. The sound was detected by autonomous underwater hydrophone arrays originally deployed to track submarines. On multiple occasions during the summer of 1997, stations across the Pacific simultaneously recorded an extremely powerful ultra-low frequency sound. When researchers analyzed the recordings, they were baffled. The sound rose rapidly in frequency over about 1 minute, had a profile consistent with biological origin, and was far louder than any known marine animal could produce. Based on the sound's intensity and known physics of biological sound production, the source would need to be several times larger than a blue whale. What makes the bloop scientifically significant is that it was detected by military-grade equipment specifically designed to identify underwater sounds. The recordings were crystal clear, captured by multiple stations, and analyzed by experienced acoustic specialists. Initial analysis by government scientists concluded the sound was biological in origin. Internal reports noted that the frequency profile and harmonic characteristics were consistent with animal vocalizations, not geological or mechanical sources. One report specifically stated the sound bears all the hallmarks of a very large unknown marine animal. Then something changed. In 2005, the official explanation was quietly revised. The government now claimed the bloop was caused by an ice quake, ice cracking from Antarctic glaciers. This explanation was presented as definitive, despite the fact that ice quakes produce completely different acoustic signatures, and the triangulated source was over 1,500 kilometers from the nearest ice shelf. Acoustic engineers who analyzed the recordings privately disagreed with the ice quake explanation. The signature was wrong, the location was wrong, and known ice quake recordings sounded nothing like the bloop. Yet their objections never appeared in official reports. More mysterious was what happened to the data. The original high-resolution recordings were reclassified, Researchers who had been studying the sound found their access revoked. Papers in progress were never published. The bloop wasn't an isolated event. The hydrophone array has detected numerous other unexplained sounds over the years, many with characteristics suggesting large biological sources. Most have never been satisfactorily explained, yet research into them is effectively non-existent. One researcher who worked with the hydrophone data for over a decade noted a disturbing pattern. Whenever the system detected sounds that couldn't be easily explained, the recordings would be flagged for further analysis, and then disappear into classified archives. The ocean remains the least explored environment on Earth. An enormous creature, living in the depths, surfacing rarely if ever, could exist entirely unknown to science. The bloop might have been the first scientific evidence of such a creature. Instead, it became another unexplained phenomenon that science decided not to explain. Fast radio bursts. In 2007, astronomers discovered something impossible. Radio telescopes detected bursts of energy from deep space, incredibly powerful, incredibly brief, and unlike anything in the known universe. The signals showed patterns suggesting artificial origin, appeared to carry embedded information, and in some cases repeated from the same location. Major observatories confirmed the phenomenon was real. Then the discoveries were quietly classified, research funding disappeared, and mainstream astronomy pretended nothing unusual had been found. Fast radio bursts are millisecond duration pulses of radio energy coming from billions of light years away. The amount of energy released in a single burst equals what the sun produces in an entire day. The first was discovered in archive data from 2001, but went unpublished for 6 years. What makes FRBs scientifically explosive is their characteristics. The signals are extraordinarily brief, yet contain as much energy as the sun emits in a day. They come from galaxies billions of light years away, yet arrive at Earth with pristine clarity, and their frequency spectrum shows unusual patterns that natural sources shouldn't produce. The most disturbing discovery came in 2012 when researchers noticed something in the data. The signals showed a mathematical relationship, suggesting they had traveled through precisely the same medium over billions of light years. The probability of this occurring naturally was calculated at less than 1 in 10 million. Several astronomers privately suggested the signals might be artificially produced. Then came the repeating bursts. In 2015, a specific source emitted multiple FRBs over several months, something natural phenomena shouldn't do. The bursts came from the same precise location, at irregular intervals with varying intensity. One senior astronomer described it as exactly what you'd expect from a beacon or communication device, not a natural source. Analysis revealed even more anomalies. The bursts showed frequency modulation patterns, systematic variations that created distinct signatures for each event. Some researchers noted that if you plotted these variations, they resembled information encoding schemes used in human communications. This is where mainstream science began backing away. Papers describing the unusual characteristics of FRBs were rejected by major journals. Research proposals to study the signals were denied funding. Astronomers who suggested the possibility of artificial origin found themselves professionally ostracized. In 2018, something extraordinary happened that was quickly suppressed. A radio telescope detected an FRB that included what appeared to be a complex modulation pattern lasting nearly a full second. Analysis showed the pattern repeated twice within the signal. 3 independent research teams concluded it was highly unlikely to be natural. None of their papers were published. Government agencies began taking unusual interest in FRB research. In 2019, a major observatory conducting FRB studies received visits from military officials who asked detailed questions about detection methods and signal analysis. Shortly after, the observatory's FRB research program was quietly shut down due to budget constraints, despite having just received a large research grant. Today, thousands of FRBs have been detected. New ones are discovered regularly, yet mainstream astronomy treats them as a minor curiosity. The possibility that some might be artificial is never mentioned in respectable publications, despite the mounting evidence. Ball lightning. For centuries, witnesses have reported seeing glowing spheres of light floating through the air, passing through solid walls, exploding with tremendous force, or simply vanishing without a trace. Ball lightning has been documented in thousands of cases, photographed, captured on video, and even created in laboratories under specific conditions. Yet mainstream physics refuses to study it seriously, dismissing one of nature's most spectacular displays as too rare or too controversial to investigate. Ball lightning appears as luminous spheres ranging from golf ball to beach ball size, typically lasting several seconds to minutes. The spheres float or drift slowly through the air, sometimes appearing indoors without any obvious entry point. Colors range from white to yellow, orange, red, or blue. Some make hissing or crackling sounds. Some are hot enough to melt metal. Others pass harmlessly through walls or windows without causing damage. The phenomenon has been reported for centuries, but modern documentation began in earnest in the 1960s. Over the following decades, thousands of cases were documented. Witnesses included scientists, pilots, meteorologists, and military personnel, trained observers whose testimony couldn't be easily dismissed. What makes ball lightning scientifically fascinating is its properties. The spheres contain tremendous energy in a small, stable form. Something conventional, physics says shouldn't be possible. Plasma in the atmosphere should dissipate almost instantly, yet ball lightning maintains coherent structure for extended periods. In 2006, Chinese researchers succeeded in producing luminous spheres using a specific arrangement of electrodes. The spheres glowed for several seconds, moved through the air, and showed characteristics matching natural ball lightning reports. The experiment was independently replicated and published in a peer-reviewed journal. Rather than sparking research interest, the successful laboratory creation of ball lightning was met with silence. Expected follow-up studies never materialized. Funding for further research was denied. The lead researcher reported that his university was discouraged from pursuing the work. In 2012, scientists in China captured the first ever spectrum of natural ball lightning using specialized equipment. The data showed emission lines exactly matching laboratory predictions. The results were published in a major physics journal. Then nothing happened. No flood of new research, no attempts to verify the findings, no theoretical breakthroughs. The refusal to study ball lightning becomes more puzzling when you consider its potential applications. A stable, long-lasting plasma configuration could revolutionize energy storage, propulsion, and weapons systems. Military documents tell a different story. Declassified reports from the 1960s and 1970s show extensive military interest in ball lightning. Research programs were established to study potential weapon applications. Then the programs were classified, and all further information was restricted. Today, ball lightning remains officially unexplained. Physics textbooks mention it briefly as a rare, poorly understood phenomenon. Research papers are occasionally published, but serious, funded, systematic investigation doesn't exist. The Hutchison effect. In 1979, a Canadian researcher experimenting with electromagnetic fields accidentally discovered something impossible. Objects in his laboratory began levitating, fusing together at room temperature, and exhibiting properties that violated known physics. The phenomena were captured on film, witnessed by multiple observers, and demonstrated repeatedly. Then military personnel confiscated his equipment. His laboratory was raided multiple times, and mainstream science declared the entire thing a hoax, despite video evidence that was never successfully debunked. The researcher was conducting experiments with high-voltage electrical equipment, Tesla coils, and signal generators when the effects began. A piece of metal levitated off a workbench and hung suspended in the air. Other objects began moving without visible cause. In the most dramatic instances, dissimilar metals fused together at room temperature, aluminum welding to steel, copper merging with wood. What made the discoveries controversial was that they violated fundamental physics. Levitation requires force application. Gravity isn't easily canceled. Room temperature fusion of dissimilar metals is thermodynamically impossible. Yet there it was, happening repeatedly, captured on video. Over the following years, the researcher demonstrated the effects hundreds of times. He brought in witnesses, engineers, scientists, military personnel, journalists. Multiple camera angles captured the same events simultaneously. The phenomena were real, reproducible, and inexplicable. The video footage is extraordinary. Metal objects lift off surfaces and hover. A cannonball rises into the air and floats. Wooden blocks shatter explosively. Aluminum bars bend and twist without being touched. Most dramatic are the fusion events, where different materials merge at their interfaces, creating bonds that shouldn't occur. Scientists who examined the fused materials found genuine anomalies. The bonding showed characteristics that shouldn't occur outside extreme heat and pressure. Microscopic analysis revealed crystal structures that couldn't form through conventional means. Rather than sparking scientific investigation, the discoveries led to suppression. Military agencies visited the laboratory repeatedly. Equipment was confiscated and returned damaged. The researcher reported surveillance, break-ins, and interference with his work. Attempts to replicate the effect at universities consistently failed, but under suspicious circumstances. Research teams reported equipment malfunctions, missing components, and unusual interference. The scientific establishment's response was to label the entire thing a hoax. Critics claimed the effects were produced through trickery, but this explanation has problems. The effects occurred in different locations with different setups. Multiple camera angles showed no evidence of manipulation. And the fused materials displayed genuine anomalies. Most telling was the military interest. If the effect was simply a hoax, why would military agencies conduct repeated investigations? Why confiscate equipment? Why monitor the researcher and interfere with his work? The video evidence remains. Hours of footage showing impossible phenomena, captured from multiple angles, witnessed by dozens of people, never successfully explained by conventional physics. Yet mainstream science treats the entire episode as discredited pseudoscience. Mysterious coral construction. In South Florida stands one of the most puzzling structures in America. A man working alone, using primitive tools, somehow moved and precisely positioned over 100 tons of coral rock, some individual pieces weighing over 30 tons. He worked only at night, allowed no witnesses, and left no explanation of his methods. Engineers who've studied the site admit that replicating the construction would be difficult even with modern equipment, yet mainstream archaeology refuses to investigate. The structure was built between 1923 and 1951 by a single individual who stood just 5 feet tall and weighed 100 pounds. He carved and moved massive coral blocks and positioned them with precision measured in fractions of an inch. The site includes an obelisk weighing 28 tons, a stone gate weighing 9 tons that rotates with a finger's touch, and walls made of blocks so precisely fitted that no mortar was needed. The mystery isn't just the scale, it's the precision. The blocks are positioned with tolerances that modern engineers struggle to achieve. The gate is so perfectly balanced that, despite weighing 9 tons, it could be moved by a child until it finally failed in 1986. Some sections include complex interlocking stones that would challenge modern fabricators. The creator claimed he understood the secrets of pyramid construction and had discovered how to manipulate anti-gravity. He worked only at night, so no one could observe his methods. Neighbors reported hearing strange humming sounds during construction, but never saw how he actually moved the massive stones. Several engineers have attempted to explain the construction using conventional methods. Every proposal has problems. Moving 30-ton blocks without cranes requires massive leverage systems, but there's no evidence of such equipment. The precision fitting would require modern surveying and cutting tools, but the builder had neither. One engineer calculated that moving a single 30-ton block just 10 feet using levers and rollers would require over 20 workers and 2 full days. The site contains hundreds of such blocks, some moved much farther, positioned vertically, and balanced on pivot points. Most intriguing are the pivot mechanisms. Several multi-ton stones are mounted on central pins that allow them to rotate smoothly. Modern engineers note that creating such perfect balance would require precision machining and careful weight distribution. How a man with primitive tools achieved this level of engineering is unexplained. After the creator's death in 1951, researchers found some of his tools, chains, tripods, and a flywheel. None were adequate to move stones of the documented weight. A journal that supposedly contained his methods was never found. The most troubling aspect for engineers is the stone gate. Creating a 9-ton rotating gate requires perfect cylindrical pivot point, precise balancing of the entire mass, and a bearing surface that won't degrade. Achieving these requirements would challenge modern fabricators with advanced tools. Proposals to study the site scientifically have been consistently rejected. Universities show no interest. Engineering societies dismiss it as a curiosity. The site exists as a roadside attraction, visited by tourists but ignored by the scientific establishment. Whether the builder truly understood principles unknown to modern science or simply possessed extraordinary practical knowledge may never be known. But the structure itself remains. Tons of precisely positioned stone, moved and placed by methods that remain unexplained. Spontaneous human combustion. For centuries, cases have been documented where human bodies burned to ash while surrounding materials remained untouched. Victims are found reduced to skeletal remains and ash, yet the chair they sat in shows no fire damage. The fires burn at temperatures far exceeding normal combustion, consume the body almost completely, but don't spread. Fire investigators confirm these cases are real and inexplicable, yet mainstream science refuses to investigate. Spontaneous human combustion cases share distinctive characteristics. The body is consumed almost entirely, reduced to ash and bone fragments. The fire's intensity is extraordinary. Crematoriums require temperatures over 1,600 degrees sustained for hours to fully consume a body, yet SHC victims burn completely in enclosed rooms without triggering building fires. The fire remains localized. A victim might burn completely while sitting on a wooden chair that shows only minor scorching. One of the most documented cases occurred in 1951 when a woman was found in her apartment. Her body had been reduced to ash except for one leg below the knee. The chair she sat in was mostly intact. The walls showed heat damage only at chair height. Fire investigators found no accelerants and no adequate ignition source. In 1982, a woman burned to death in her kitchen, while 2 firefighters stood less than 12 feet away, trying to break down the locked door. They reported seeing blue flames through the window, but felt no heat from outside. When they entered, her body was almost completely consumed, yet kitchen curtains remained intact. The physics of these cases is disturbing. Human bodies are about 70% water and don't burn easily. Even with accelerants completely consuming, a body requires sustained, intense heat that would inevitably spread to surroundings. Yet, SHC cases show the opposite: complete body consumption with minimal surrounding damage. Fire investigators who've studied these cases privately acknowledge they're anomalous. The burn patterns violate everything known about fire behavior. The lack of external fuel sources makes the events thermodynamically improbable. The localized nature suggests an internal heat source, but no internal chemical process can generate the required temperatures. The standard explanation offered by skeptics is the wick effect. The victim's clothing acts as a wick, and body fat fuels slow combustion. But experimental attempts to replicate SHC using the wick effect produce burns that take many hours, generate substantial smoke, and don't come close to the complete consumption seen in actual cases. In 2010, fire science students attempted to test the wick effect experimentally. Even with optimal conditions, external flame sources, and forced air, they couldn't replicate the complete consumption and localized burn patterns characteristic of SHC. What's particularly troubling is witness accounts. In several cases, victims were seen surrounded by blue or yellowish flames that witnesses described as unnatural or not spreading like normal fire. The heat wasn't radiating outward as it should. The immediate area was intensely hot, but the heat dropped off dramatically within feet. Medical examiners find disturbing anomalies. Bone calcination requires sustained temperatures over 1,400 degrees. Yet these temperatures occurred inside closed rooms without setting off fires. In some cases, internal organs showed evidence of burning from the inside. Attempts to study SHC scientifically are immediately dismissed. Research proposals are rejected as unworthy of investigation. Fire science departments show no interest. The phenomenon exists in official records. Fire departments have documented cases, but but it's treated as something we don't discuss. Cases continue to occur. Fire departments continue to encounter unexplained deaths, where victims burned completely in enclosed spaces without causing structural fires, and mainstream science continues to look away. The Baltic Sea anomaly. In 2011, ocean explorers using sonar discovered a massive structure 300 feet below the surface of the Baltic Sea. The formation is 200 feet in diameter, perfectly circular, with geometric features including straight edges, right angles, and a staircase leading to an opening. Multiple expeditions have confirmed it's not a natural formation. Samples show unusual composition. Yet mainstream archaeology refuses to investigate, and attempts to study the site have been mysteriously blocked. The discovery occurred during a routine ocean floor survey. The sonar image showed a circular disc-shaped object with clearly defined edges, measuring approximately 60 meters in diameter. Features included what appeared to be structural elements, a ramp or staircase, and regular patterns suggesting construction rather than natural formation. The structure sits at the end of what appears to be a track extending over 1,000 feet across the ocean floor, as if something large had slid or been dragged to its current position. Sonar revealed internal spaces, geometric patterns, and features inconsistent with glacial deposits or volcanic formation. In 2012, an expedition team descended to the site with cameras and sampling equipment. The structure appeared to be made of stone, but with unnaturally smooth surfaces and sharp angles. Some sections showed what looked like carved details. Samples brought to the surface included metals and compounds that shouldn't naturally occur at that depth in the Baltic. The most controversial discovery was the electromagnetic anomaly. Divers reported that electronic equipment malfunctioned near the structure. Satellite phones stopped working. Cameras failed. When divers moved away, everything functioned normally again. Geological analysis of the samples revealed troubling inconsistencies. Some rock showed signs of extreme heat treatment, temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees. Others contained trace metals suggesting human activity. Carbon dating proved impossible because the samples contained anomalous isotope ratios. Media coverage sparked worldwide interest. But rather than scientific investigation, the response was dismissal. Geologists claimed it was glacial formation, despite the geometric features. Others suggested it was a military device, despite no evidence. Some simply declared it a natural rock outcropping, while ignoring the electromagnetic anomalies. Funding for further investigation mysteriously evaporated. The discovery team sought support from universities and research institutions. All declined. Private funding sources that initially expressed interest withdrew. One potential sponsor reported receiving calls from government officials advising against supporting the research. In 2014, the team attempted another expedition but encountered bureaucratic obstacles. Permits were denied, delayed, or issued with restrictions making research impractical. Maritime authorities declared parts of the site off-limits due to environmental concerns. The electromagnetic anomaly remains unexplained. Several electrical engineers examined the data and confirmed that the equipment malfunctions were real. Natural geological formations don't produce these effects. The structure remains at the bottom of the Baltic, unexcavated and officially unexplained. The site has become famous in alternative research circles while being ignored by mainstream archaeology. If the structure is simply a natural formation, why the electromagnetic anomalies? Why the unusual materials? Why the blockade of research? The easiest way to debunk a false mystery is through thorough scientific investigation. The refusal to investigate suggests authorities already know what's there and prefer it remain hidden. The WOW signal. In 1977, a radio telescope detected a powerful narrow-band signal from space that lasted 72 seconds. The signal's characteristics were exactly what scientists had predicted for artificial extraterrestrial transmission. It was so significant that the astronomer who discovered it wrote "Wow" in the margin of the computer printout. Then the signal was never detected again. Research into its origin was quietly discouraged, and mainstream astronomy declared the case closed, despite never explaining what actually produced the signal. The signal was detected by the Big Ear radio telescope on August 15, 1977. It was a strong narrow-band radio transmission at 1420 MHz, the hydrogen line, considered the most likely frequency for interstellar communication. The signal strength peaked at over 30 times the background noise and matched exactly what researchers had predicted an artificial extraterrestrial signal would look like. What made the signal significant was its characteristics. It was remarkably narrow band, occupying less bandwidth than any known natural source produces. The frequency was precise. The signal's intensity rose and fell in a pattern consistent with a source moving across the telescope's field of view as Earth rotated. The duration of 72 seconds matched what would be expected from a transmission passing through the telescope's listening window. Most importantly, the signal originated from a specific location in space, the constellation Sagittarius, in an area with no known stars. The signal couldn't have come from Earth. Its characteristics proved it originated from deep space. And it wasn't random noise. The narrow bandwidth and steady frequency indicated intelligent manipulation. In the months following the detection, astronomers attempted to relocate the signal. The telescope was pointed at the same area repeatedly. Nothing. Other radio telescopes joined the search. Silence. It had appeared once for 72 seconds, then vanished. The most controversial aspect was the signal's perfection. It matched theoretical predictions for extraterrestrial communication so precisely that some astronomers initially suspected a hoax. But investigations ruled out human transmission. The signal's characteristics proved it came from space. Attempts to explain the signal through natural means have all failed. Cosmic masers, reflected signals from satellites, emissions from comets, every natural explanation has been tested and found inadequate. The hydrogen line frequency is significant. It's the most common emission line in the universe. Any civilization attempting interstellar communication would likely choose this frequency. The fact that the WOW signal appeared exactly at this frequency, with characteristics matching theoretical alien transmissions, suggests it might have been deliberate. Yet mainstream astronomy has largely abandoned interest. No major telescope time has been dedicated to searching for repeat transmissions. Papers analyzing the signal appear only in specialized journals. The phenomenon that should have been the most significant event in astronomy has been relegated to historical footnote status. The official dismissal came in 2017 when one astronomer claimed the signal was produced by a passing comet. This explanation was immediately challenged. Comets don't produce the right frequency, bandwidth, or intensity. Yet mainstream media reported it as mystery solved. What's particularly suspicious is the pattern of research suppression. Scientists who want to conduct follow-up observations find telescope time denied. Proposals to search for repeat signals are rejected. The WOW signal represents the strongest candidate for artificial extraterrestrial transmission ever detected. It matched theoretical predictions precisely, came from deep space, and has never been adequately explained. Yet, rather than intensive investigation, the response has been indifference. The telescope that detected the WOW signal was demolished in 1997. The exact location in space hasn't been systematically monitored. No dedicated search has been mounted. One of the most significant potential discoveries in human history has been effectively abandoned. These 10 phenomena share more than just mystery. They're all real, documented, and measurable. They've been recorded on instruments, captured on camera, and witnessed by credible observers. Yet mainstream science treats them as though they don't exist, or worse, as threats to established understanding that must be ignored or suppressed. The pattern is consistent. Initial discovery generates interest. Preliminary investigation reveals anomalies that challenge accepted theory, and then suddenly, funding disappears, research is blocked, and scientists who persist find their careers damaged. The phenomena don't vanish. They continue occurring, being observed, and accumulating evidence. But institutional science looks away. Perhaps most disturbing is what this reveals about the scientific establishment. Science claims to seek truth regardless of convenience. It presents itself as open to evidence and willing to follow data wherever it leads. These phenomena prove otherwise. When observations threaten fundamental theories, challenge powerful interests, or suggest realities too uncomfortable to accept, the response isn't investigation, it's suppression. The suppression takes many forms. Research proposals are rejected, papers can't get published. Scientists are denied telescope time, laboratory access, or funding. Media coverage portrays serious researchers as fringe cranks. Witnesses are dismissed as unreliable. Evidence is explained away through increasingly implausible conventional theories. What are we not being told? What discoveries remain buried in classified files or suppressed through institutional indifference? These 10 phenomena prove that unexplained doesn't mean unimportant. It often means too important to acknowledge publicly. The hum continues to drive people to desperation. Hessdalen's lights keep appearing in the Norwegian sky. The ocean depths hold secrets that hydrophones detect, but science refuses to investigate. Signals from space go unexplained. Phenomena that should revolutionize our understanding of reality are dismissed as curiosities or errors. The mechanisms that enable these cover-ups remain in place. Classification systems hide discoveries. Funding controls ensure only approved research proceeds. Academic gatekeeping prevents publication of uncomfortable findings. And the public never learns that some mysteries aren't unsolvable. They're just unacknowledged. These 10 phenomena prove that sometimes the biggest mystery isn't what we don't know. It's what we refuse to study.